You wake up at 6 a.m. The alarm goes off, and dim light filters through the curtains. You lie there, not tired, but not eager either. The phone is within reach. One swipe opens up the whole world, and you scroll again. A loop through Instagram, a loop through the news, a loop through emptiness. 15 minutes pass, and you're still there, not doing anything wrong, but not doing anything right either. And in that very moment, no one scolding you, no one stopping you, you've quietly surrendered to yourself. The most important battle in life doesn't happen in front of others, but silently within your own mind. There is no clear enemy, only you, the one who delays, the one who makes excuses, the one who always says, maybe tomorrow. Stoicism teaches that the only thing you can control is yourself. You can't command life to be easier, but you can become more resilient, and everything begins with waking up to your own thoughts. It's not the world that weakens you, it's you when you believe you don't have the strength, when you compromise with comfort. This isn't about changing the world. This is the journey of remaking yourself habit by habit, choice by choice, promise by promise. And that's when you begin to face the most important question. Will you keep living the same way or start mastering yourself? 1. The enemy within. No one needs to push you down. How many times have you pushed yourself down with a single thought? I'm not good enough. I'm not ready. I'll do it tomorrow. The most dangerous enemy doesn't come from the outside, doesn't appear in clear form, but hides deep within you in procrastination masked as, I need rest, in fear disguised as, it's not the right time. It's the familiar voice that surfaces each time you're about to do something important, every time you're about to step out of your comfort zone. It doesn't shout or make noise, but whispers, it's fine to skip today. That's good enough already. No one's watching. Why push yourself? And you listen again and again until you no longer know what your real voice sounds like. Stoicism has long warned of this invisible threat. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That quote isn't just a wall decoration. It's a truth we've all lived when nothing bad has happened yet, but we exhaust ourselves with worry, playing out the worst scenarios in our minds. The real fear isn't that the world out there is too harsh, but that you don't realize you're battling yourself every single day. No one is tying you down. Yet you stay still, take no action, because you believe that voice in your head that says you're not strong enough to change. The Stoic doesn't try to destroy that voice completely, because they understand it's part of human nature. Fear, laziness, procrastination. These are ancient brain responses that once helped our ancestors survive. But survival and living with purpose are not the same thing. You can spend a lifetime merely existing, never touching your true potential just because you're too familiar with comfort. And if you never learn to observe yourself, you'll always live under the control of instincts that no longer serve your modern life. To defeat the enemy within, you don't need to scream, show off, or prove anything to anyone. You just need to start asking questions. When you want to quit, ask, why am I thinking this? When you start to delay, ask, what's holding me back? Don't let the voice in your head dictate your actions without being challenged. Be a neutral observer, a sentinel guarding the fortress of your mind, always ready to spot the shadows sneaking through the cracks. True victory doesn't come from dramatic moments, but from quiet decisions made when no one is watching. Every time you act, even though you feel uncertain, every time you rise instead of retreat, every time you face things instead of postponing them, you're slowly reclaiming your mental sovereignty. And right there, where there's no applause, no medals, no recognition, you begin to build a quiet, enduring power. Self-mastery. 2. You are what you repeatedly do. Everyone holds a picture of themselves in their mind, an ideal version, strong, disciplined, living with purpose. But between that image and reality lies a gap few dare to confront. Because the truth is, you're not who you think you are, and you're not who you wish to become. You are what you do, consistently, every single day. Not in what you say, not in goals hung on a wall, but in the habits you repeat when no one is watching. Stoicism doesn't place faith in fleeting inspiration or grand declarations. It focuses on behavior. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his journal to be quoted centuries later. He wrote it to remind himself daily, in every action, in every choice. Because he understood, identity isn't predetermined. It's a construction built from countless bricks called habits. You might call yourself disciplined, but if you keep delaying the things you claim to value, you're betraying your own definition. If you see yourself as principled, yet consistently choose ease over commitment, complaining over action, then that principle is just self-deception. And if this happens often enough, it's no longer a temporary lapse. It becomes who you are. But here's the good news. That also means you can always rebuild, starting with the smallest actions. If you wake up 15 minutes earlier each day to read one page, you're reprogramming yourself into someone proactive and eager to learn. If you keep promises to yourself, a workout, a chore, a minor task, you're laying the foundation for a self you can trust. And if you repeat those actions long enough, you won't need to pretend to be disciplined anymore. You will become it literally. Identity doesn't come from bursts of willpower. It comes from repeated consistency. The small choices, unseen and unpraised, are what shape your true self. Every time you get up when you don't want to, every time you finish something you hate, every time you don't break a silent promise to yourself, you're casting a vote for the stronger version of you. And like any election, enough votes decide the winner. You don't need to become someone perfect in a day, but you do need to start living in alignment with the nature you want to forge. Identity is not something you declare. It's something you prove in every action, every habit, every repeated day. Because in the end, you are not who you think you are. You are who you live like in the small moments when no one is watching and you still choose not to betray yourself. 3. Hardship reflects the inner self. Some days everything flows. Work feels smooth. People are kind. Your body feels strong. And your mind is at peace. On days like that, it's easy to see yourself as resilient, disciplined, and grounded. But real strength isn't tested when you're doing well. It reveals itself when everything starts to fall apart. In chaos, your true nature surfaces not in the ideals you once wrote down, but in how you respond to trials. The Stoics understood this well. To them, adversity isn't something to avoid, it's something to welcome. Because hardship is like a mirror, it doesn't create your nature, it reveals it. When the world says no, when plans unravel, when people turn away, when your health slips, that's when you see clearly whether you're truly grounded or merely comfortable in good conditions. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, adversity doesn't slow us down. It exists to force growth, to demand we rise to a new level. When you're pushed to your edge, you have no choice but to reveal your truest self. You either break or rise. There's no safe middle ground. But the deeper truth is this. Adversity not only reveals who you are, it gives you the chance to become someone new. When you face loss, you can choose to accept it, learn from it, and evolve. When you face failure, you can choose reflection over blame. Every hardship is a test, but also a lesson. If you're clear-headed enough to observe yourself amid the difficulty, you'll see habits, reactions, and limits you never noticed before. Adversity doesn't have to be some grand disaster. Sometimes it's just a day you feel tired and don't want to work, an awkward conversation, a rejection that stings. These small moments are your training ground where you choose calm over irritation, action over complaint, acceptance over avoidance. The Stoic doesn't wait for the storm to build strength. He trains in the smallest wins. And here's the strange thing. Once you begin to see hardship as a teacher, you stop resenting it. You no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, you ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" When that shift happens, adversity loses its power to harm. It's no longer the enemy, it becomes a tool. No one wishes for pain, but the Stoic understands. If you must endure it, let it serve a purpose. Let it help you see yourself more clearly, know yourself more deeply, and ultimately become more sovereign. 4. The weight of choice. No one sees you when you wake up in the morning. Open your eyes and face the first seconds of a new day. But right then, in the quiet before the phone rings, before anyone demands anything from you, a silent battle begins. Not with the world, but with yourself. Will you rise or scroll your phone? Will you do the important thing or delay again? And whatever you choose, you are shaping yourself through those seemingly trivial choices. We often think character is shaped by genetics, environment, or a few pivotal moments in life. But the Stoics didn't believe that. To them, human nature isn't defined by fate, but by repeated behavior. And behavior starts with choice. Every decision you make, no matter how small, carries weight. It either pulls you closer to your better self or pushes you backward into the shadow of delay and fear. Choosing ease is always easier than choosing discipline. Choosing to scroll is easier than learning a skill. Complaining is easier than taking action. But what people often fail to see is this. Every time you choose the easy path, you're casting a vote for your weaker self. And like any election, the version that gets the most votes becomes you. Epictetus once said, "You may not control all events, but you can control your response to them." In every moment, you are choosing your response, and that choice defines you. No decision is neutral. Even when you think you're not deciding, you're still choosing. Choosing to stay the same, to avoid, to delay. And each of these choices carries consequences whether you notice them or not. What makes the weight of choice especially serious is that it accumulates. One lazy morning won't ruin you, but 10, 30, 100 mornings like that will. One delay won't destroy your identity, but if it becomes a habit, you become the person who delays. The Stoic doesn't wait for life to fall apart before acting. They understand that every small decision is a brick and you're always building something, whether you realize it or not. Either you're building a resilient, reliable self or a fragile shelter that collapses at the first storm. So don't dismiss the small things. Don't think just for today is harmless. Today is the foundation of tomorrow, and every choice, however quiet, is a declaration of who you're becoming. The Stoic doesn't live by inspiration, but by principle. They don't ask, "How do I feel?" They ask, "What is right?" And they let that answer guide them not sometimes, but every day, every hour, every minute, because they know character doesn't come naturally. It's forged through solitary, unseen decisions. 5. Self-respect comes from personal discipline. You can deceive others with appearances, with charming words, with a hint of success. But there's one person you can never deceive yourself. And self-respect, the thing everyone wants, doesn't come from outside approval, but from the sense that you can trust yourself. It's not born from praise, but from keeping promises to yourself even when no one's watching, no one knows, and there's no reward waiting. Stoicism doesn't define confidence as holding your head high in front of a crowd. They see it as the calm ability to look in the mirror and feel no shame. And to do that, you don't need to do anything grand. You just need to keep your word. You say you'll wake up early, then wake up. You say you'll exercise, then exercise. You say you'll write each day, then write. Not because someone will check on you, but because every word is a spiritual contract. And when you break that contract, what you lose first isn't the result, but your trust in yourself. When you constantly break promises to yourself, you begin to doubt who you are. Every goal you set is slowly eroded by a quiet thought. Will I quit again this time? And that doubt eats you from within. It makes you afraid to start, afraid to commit, afraid to dive in. Because you've taught yourself your word can't be trusted. But when you build personal discipline not through harshness, but with steady, consistent action, you begin to rebuild something rare: faith in yourself. Self-respect doesn't come from always being right, always being skilled, or always achieving what you want. It comes from being honest with yourself. You don't make excuses. You don't justify failure. You don't let fleeting emotions break long-term commitments. And through the act of doing what's right, even when you're tired, even when bored, you start to build real strength. Not the kind that intimidates others, but the kind that anchors you in your own storm. The Stoic doesn't believe in living by inspiration. They believe in living by standards. Every day is a chance to express your principles through action, not words. And if today you fail, then tomorrow you return and try again. Self-respect doesn't demand perfection, but it demands honesty. Honesty with your effort, honesty with what you've done and haven't done. And above all, honesty with the better version of you that you're trying to become. You don't need to write down 100 goals. Just choose one promise to yourself each day, something you know is right, is useful, will make you better, and never break it. Even if it's just 10 minutes of meditation, 1 page of reading, or a short workout. Discipline isn't about intensity, it's about commitment. And if you hold that commitment each day, even in a small act, you will slowly build an unshakable self-respect, not because others approve of you, but because you know you are someone worth trusting. 6. Comparison is a silent prison. You don't notice when it starts. You just open social media for a moment, glance at some pictures, a few captions, a few moments of life arranged perfectly. And then a vague feeling slips in. Maybe I'm falling behind. Maybe others are living better, achieving more, feeling happier. You don't say it aloud, don't complain, but somewhere in your mind, a quiet voice says, I'm not enough. And just like that, you've stepped into a prison with no bars, no guards, but stronger than any wall. The prison of comparison. Stoicism teaches that peace doesn't come from everything outside being perfect, but from not letting the outside control your inner world. Comparison by nature is handing over your self-worth to someone else. You let others' speed, success, body, wealth, even their invisible milestones become your standard. And every time you do that, you ignore a simple truth. Your journey is your own. No one shares your starting point, your context, your temperament, or your goals. But when you forget this, you begin to live a life that's not yours, and that's where suffering begins. The Stoic doesn't oppose progress, but they warn of losing your autonomy when you define yourself through someone else's eyes. They believe you should compare yourself to only one person, the you of yesterday. Every time you react better, choose what's right over what's easy, stay calm instead of impulsive, you've progressed. And that is true achievement. Not likes, not public victories, but the shrinking gap between who you were and who you are. Comparison blinds you to your own progress. You might be recovering from a tough season, rebuilding from ruins, striving in silence. But when you see others in a more radiant stage, you forget they too had to pass through nights as dark as yours. And instead of being proud for moving forward, you feel behind not because of reality, but because of an illusion you created. Comparison doesn't just hurt you, it steals your gratitude. You can't appreciate what you have when your eyes are always fixed on what others possess. You can't live your life well if you're constantly pulled into someone else's. The Stoic chooses to live by internal standards, not external trends. They know that true freedom begins the moment you stop competing with others and start building your own code of living, where growth is measured by maturity, calm, and self-command. To escape the prison of comparison, you don't need to quit social media or vanish from the world. You just need to return to one question. Did I live better today than yesterday? If the answer is yes, that's all you need. The rest? Let others live their lives while you live yours, fully. 7. The battle never ends. And that's a good thing. One of the greatest illusions modern people often chase is the belief that one day everything will finally settle down. That one day you'll no longer feel lazy, no longer doubt yourself, no longer hesitate or procrastinate. A day when everything runs smoothly and you simply live on the momentum of perfection. But Stoicism does not believe in that dream. It teaches that the inner battle between what is right and what is easy, between reason and emotion, between action and delay will always continue. Not because you are weak, but because you are human. You will never complete the process of becoming a better version of yourself. There will always be a part of you that wants to rest when it hasn't earned it, to delay when you should act, to choose safety when risk is required. Every day you wake up, the battle begins again, not because you failed yesterday, but because growth is never ending. And what matters isn't how many times you've won in the past, but whether you are still willing to step into the fight today. The Stoic doesn't wish for an easy life. They wish for a steady mind, capable of facing life as it is. They don't expect a day to come when they'll be free from inner struggle, because they understand, as long as you're still struggling, it means you're still living with purpose. The battle never ends, but that doesn't mean you always lose. On the contrary, the very act of continuing to fight silently without applause is proof that you are living by the highest standard, your own. The truth is, you will still have tired days, still want to quit, still mess up even when you know what's right. But if you return, stand back up, and keep choosing what's right when given the chance, then you are winning. Not a one-time victory, but the deepest kind. Winning over yourself through small, repeated decisions, one day at a time. And when you look back, you'll realize it was that relentless repetition that changed you, not because you never failed, but because you never stopped. The inner struggle is not a burden. It is an invitation, a daily opportunity to show courage, presence, and loyalty to your values. It is proof that you are still trying, still alive. Because only when you stop fighting do you truly lose. And so, instead of wishing for the battle to end, be grateful that it still exists. For as long as you hear the voice of reason, as long as you feel the conflict between what you should and what you want, you still have the power to choose what's right. There is no finish line, no permanent ideal state. But that's not bad news. It's a reminder that you can always improve, always reset, always begin again, no matter how yesterday went. And it is this continuity that gives life true depth. Not that you will be perfect, but that you will never stop striving. 8. Discipline over inspiration. Some days, you wake up full of energy. You write down your goals, make plans, and get to work with excitement, feeling unstoppable. But then there are other days when just opening your eyes feels heavy. Everything is dull and discouraging, and you don't understand why yesterday you felt so driven, yet today you want to give up. That is the nature of inspiration. Beautiful, powerful, but fragile and unreliable. Stoicism doesn't see inspiration as a dependable engine. It understands that emotions come and go, like weather, and you cannot base a principled life on the weather. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, "I am a human being, and I must do the work of a human being." That phrase isn't loud or dramatic, but it contains a core truth. Discipline is the foundation. Inspiration is just decoration. The Stoic doesn't wait for inspiration to act, they act because it is right, even when they feel nothing at all. Inspiration is a guest. It arrives without warning and leaves just as suddenly. You can't control when you feel excited, creative, or powerful, but you can always control whether you do what must be done. Discipline, unlike inspiration, does not depend on outside conditions. It is an inner commitment that you will act, no matter your mood, no matter the weather, whether praised or unseen. And because of that, discipline is the most reliable path to a strong identity. When you live based on inspiration, you become a slave to what you feel. You'll break promises to yourself just because you're tired. You'll delay important tasks because you're not in the mood. You'll admire people who seem always fired up, not realizing what keeps them going isn't inspiration. It's a system. It's the small habits, repeated endlessly, often boring, but never broken. The Stoic chooses to live by reason, not emotion. They don't deny feelings, they just don't follow them. Discipline doesn't mean being harsh, rigid, or joyless. It simply means you keep your word to yourself, even when no one is watching, even when no one cheers you on. That is the quietest form of power a person can hold, the ability to lead themselves through their darkest days. And it's in the moments when you act, despite not wanting to, that you truly change. In the tired workouts, the lifeless pages, the dull work sessions, you are training a unique muscle. Perseverance. It's the kind no one sees, but everyone feels when you walk through the world grounded, unshaken, needing no reason or mood to act. Because you don't move because it feels good. You move because you said you would. And that makes you trustworthy to others, and more importantly, to yourself. 9. Strength comes from discomfort. You can't become strong in a soft chair. Steel is not forged in cool water. Everything durable, sharp, and resilient has been through fire, pressure, and the edge of its limits. Humans are no different. Inner strength doesn't come from advice or knowledge. It comes from how you behave when surrounded by discomfort. It's not the easy moments that test your resolve, but the ones where you must do what you dislike, what is unfamiliar, what is uncomfortable, and do it anyway. The Stoic sees discomfort as an essential part of growth. They don't hate it, avoid it, or treat it like an accident to be quickly escaped. They know that to live with depth and self-command, comfort cannot be your home. Prolonged ease dulls courage. It softens the body, weakens the spirit, and numbs the mind. You start quitting just because something feels inconvenient. You begin making excuses for every minor setback, and without realizing it, you're no longer at the wheel of your own life. No one is born loving hardship. All of us are drawn to ease, a button instead of effort, a shortcut instead of a path, a quick win instead of slow progress. But every time you choose the easy way, you pay a price. You give up resilience. You trade consistency. And most of all, you lose the chance to build something deep within. Comfort doesn't make you grow. It keeps you in the safe zone and convinces you that this is good enough. But if you want to evolve, if you want to become a stronger version of yourself, discomfort is the path you cannot skip. When you step into a workout and feel sore, that's muscle being activated. When your mind strains during study, that's intellect expanding. When you start a new job, open up in a deep relationship, or finally speak the truth you've avoided, you'll feel discomfort. And that is the starting point of transformation. True strength doesn't mean it's never hard. It means you know it's hard and still go in. The Stoic chooses difficulty, not out of masochism, but because they understand the long-term value of not going easy on themselves. Every time you do something hard, wake early in the cold. Tell the truth when silence is easier. Keep pushing when motivation is gone. You lay another brick in a solid self. Strength doesn't come from overcoming one grand challenge. It comes from repeatedly facing small discomforts others avoid. And when discomfort becomes your companion, you'll be surprised to find yourself steadier, more focused, more awake. Because when you no longer fear discomfort, you're no longer controlled by it. You'll stand in chaos and remain calm, face failure and still believe. Start over without shame. That is real strength, the kind no one can give you and no one can take away, because it was forged within you day by day. Each time you chose the hard thing over the easy one. 10. Personal responsibility is true liberation. We grow up in a world where there's always someone to blame. When things don't go our way, we point fingers at circumstances, at parents, at society, at the education system, at luck. It's easy to live with a victim mindset, where every problem is someone else's fault and we're just unwilling recipients of the consequences. But the more you blame, the more powerless you feel. The more you avoid responsibility, the more your life slips from your hands. And then, at some point, you're forced to face a hard truth with the greatest liberating power. No one can live your life for you, and no one is responsible in your place. The Stoic doesn't believe in complaining. They don't seek pity, nor do they try to control what lies beyond their reach. They focus on one thing only: themselves. And that's not selfishness, it's a liberating choice. Because when you take full responsibility for your life, your thoughts, emotions, actions, and outcomes, you are no longer dependent on outside conditions. You don't wait for someone to fix it. You don't beg the world to change. You don't rely on validation to feel worthy. You simply begin with yourself. And that is the only thing you truly control. Personal responsibility doesn't mean carrying every burden or fault. It simply means that from this moment forward, you stop making excuses to delay change. No matter what happened in the past, no matter how much you were hurt, no matter who disappointed you, the present is still the moment you can choose to respond differently. And real freedom begins the moment you dare to say, "This happened, but from here on, I am responsible for how I live." The world outside will always be unfair. There will always be people who act wrongly, unexpected events, unpredictable hardship. But you can't control the storm. You can only control the oar. And if you let anger, blame, or a sense of injustice steer your actions, then you've handed over the wheel to something that isn't yours. The Stoic understands that control doesn't lie in circumstances, it lies in how we choose to respond. And when you respond with reason, with intention, not with fleeting emotion. That's when you truly live from inner strength. Responsibility does not weaken you. On the contrary, it makes you stronger. It forces you to grow up, to face reality, to accept truths that are uncomfortable but necessary. When you stop leaning on excuses, you start to act. When you stop hoping someone will save you, you begin to save yourself. And in that journey, quiet, unglamorous, you become free. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer bound by the illusion that others must change for you to live better. I don't write these things from the position of someone who has fully mastered themselves. I write as someone who struggles every day, not to fall into ease, not to excuse fear, not to betray the principles I've chosen. And in that resistance-filled journey, I've realized there is no victory more solid than keeping a promise to yourself, even the smallest one. Inspiration comes and goes, but discipline is something you can train. Circumstances can be unfair, but you always have the right to choose your response. Others may move ahead, but you don't need to chase them if you're still taking steady steps on your own path. Stoic philosophy doesn't make life easier, but it gives you the strength to walk through hardship without breaking. And when you understand that you are the only thing you truly own and are responsible for, you begin to live without fear because you know you can trust yourself. If this video touched something within you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next one. And no matter what tomorrow brings, remember, you grow stronger each time you dare to face yourself in silence, without needing to prove anything to the world. See you in the next video.